Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Northwest Georgia Cryptic. I am Rick Weaver. I'm joined tonight by my co-host Blake Duckworth. Uh, Tonight, we want to welcome two very special guests from the state of Michigan, Val and Dave. They're both retired law enforcement, uh, and they both have unique stories to tell of their encounters with Sasquatch. We'll be discussing also tonight. Uh, is Sasquatch a real creature or one of the greatest hoaxes ever? Uh, Without further ado, I'm going to let Blake take it over for just a second, and then we'll bring our guest on. Blake?
Hey guys, y'all doing okay tonight? I hope everyone had a happy Thanksgiving. And if you guys don't mind, please hit the subscribe button, bell notification, comment, give us a like. And we just want to thank you guys for all the support you show. If you don't mind, like I said, if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. And that's it, Ricky.
All right. All right, let's bring our guest on. Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, Dave.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Hi there.
All right,
You guys doing all right tonight?
You guys would go ahead and tell our viewers a little about yourselves.
Go ahead, Dave.
Thanks. I'm Dave. I'm a retired federal agent. I worked as a special agent for the federal government for, seems like forever, but I've been in law enforcement my entire career. I started as a street cop. I've taught at 2 universities and 2 colleges. When I retired, I started hiking in the northern woods of Michigan and came across, among other things, bear. Have encountered bear out there, but I ended up having a couple of encounters that I would be lending towards it being Bigfoot. The first encounter I had was in 2017 and was at Akiak Falls in Michigan. It was a primitive campground across from a state park, the largest falls in the lower peninsula of Michigan. And across the river that night, I heard whoops and yahoos coming from about 3 or 4 different places over a distance of about a quarter mile in the woods. And I had also stones tossed into camp and at my tent that night as well. I tossed some stones back playfully. My second encounter was in 2018, about this time of year, maybe a little bit earlier, where I was driving my car between Ypsilanti, Michigan, and Monroe, Michigan, southeast Michigan, and turned off in a county road, and it was very, very dark as though the power was out. And as I drove by on this road, I saw 30 yards off in the distance what people would describe as a Sasquatch. It had two legs, 2 arms, standing upright. Thing had no neck and very bright red bioluminescent eyes. This thing just projected fear upon me. It was not my fear, but I think it zapped me. It took me a few seconds to comprehend as I drove down the road, and I decided ultimately about a half minute later that I wouldn't turn around and go take another look at it, that I'd just keep going. That's basically it in a nutshell. Val, how about you?
Well, I spent 25 and a half years in law enforcement. I did 2 military tours. I was a military police investigator. I was a federal task force agent for a 3-letter agency. And after 25 and a half years, I also, in addition to that, I should add that I was a licensed private investigator here in the state of Michigan. And prior to my decision to retire, I got involved in, well, I actually decided I would make an effort to pay it forward. And I took on a task looking for a missing person that was missing over 30 years. And once I got involved with that, my search took me from Florida across Louisiana to Houston, Texas, where the individual that I was looking for was actually found. He was a homicide victim. And so my involvement with Bigfoot Sasquatch actually occurred by tragic happenstance. And it was while searching for this individual, I started noticing patterns of things all along the way, such as missing people, murdered people, dead people, all along the freeway from the Atlantic coast through the area of Texas and stuff. So I started looking at this phenomenon, and then I started asking friends for assistance in pulling up some old records and information on a Sasquatch sighting down in Monroe, Michigan, back in 1965. And once I started looking at this, and then I started looking at the police or the authorities' statements on this creature, I got a hold of a well-known Michigan Bigfoot researcher, Bob Daigle, and from that point on, that was back in 2012, I started going out with him and started researching this Bigfoot Sasquatch creature a little bit more. And what I did was I transferred the skills and experience that I learned from the job and brought it into Bigfoot Sasquatch, and ultimately developed and built 4 Bigfoot Sasquatch databases. One in particular is Michigan database, and another one is a United States North American Bigfoot database. And in addition to that, one of the other databases that I built is what I call a reference book, and it has over 116 data points of different topic subjects relating to Bigfoot that I can pull up and drop down every one of the reports that associate with that particular subject, complete with source information. That's very important when you study and research a topic. And so that's where I get involved in it. So 2 years after I developed this database, at which time I'm actually profiling Bigfoot Sasquatch. 2 years after I developed this program, I have my own Sasquatch encounter in Washtenaw County, Michigan, in 2014. So 2 years after I developed this profiler's database, I have my own encounter.
Now, as far as your encounter, what exactly happened with your encounter?
Well, my encounter entails myself and Bob Daigle again, the older gentleman, well-known Michigan Bigfoot researcher. We had gone out. It was a very hot July summer's day. It was one of these days where the deer flies are just biting you. Mosquitoes were terrible. I was miserable. I was hot. And we walked into the forest, and we paused a couple times walking into this forest. There was only 2 of us. It was me and Bob. And we stopped because he mentioned that he heard or he felt there was acorns flittering through the leaves of the trees and stuff. And I noticed that. And I told him in a whispering voice, I says, I don't think it's anything other than acorns falling from the trees and stuff. It may have, and it may not have been, but we did hear the acorns, and we did see the acorns falling to our feet and stuff. And as we walked a little further, we started to hear cracking wood. And these aren't sticks, and these aren't twigs. These were large, thick branches that were cracked. The crack loud enough for you to notice it. So we walked on a little further. We found a large, very large tree had fallen. Not that it was pushed down. It was already there. And on the other side of the tree was a large Bigfoot nest. And a very large Bigfoot nest with that looked like a tunnel, like a long tunnel of bramble bush and thickets and what have you. But it was dark inside. And Bob was on his hands and knees looking inside. And, I wasn't going to go over there to crawl inside to find out what was in there. I mean, just not something I'm not going to do. But anyways, I stood on the other side of the tree. And as I did that, I was standing there looking around, looking up in the trees. I felt as though something was watching me. And that's that familiar feeling that you get when you walk into a restaurant or a bar and you got all the eyes on you. If you guys are paranormal investigators, you know what I'm talking about. You walk into a place and you feel like oppression, like there's eyes on you.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I felt out there. And when I look to my right, I see this beast on the side of a tree. And it was about 13 feet up off the ground on the side of a tree. I don't know how it was hanging on the tree, by its claws or hands or fingers or something. But it was on the tree, and I didn't know if it was coming down the tree or going up the tree, but it was there. And I'm looking at this, and my first impression when I looked at this thing was, what the F? Are you kidding me already? Somebody out here in 90-degree weather in a costume like this. That was my first impression. I thought it was a joke. I mean, once you see something like this, Rick and Blake, you can't unsee it. It's there. And so I was quite certain in a matter of seconds that this was real, than what I was looking at, because it didn't respond. It didn't laugh. If it was somebody dressed in a costume.
It's so hard for your brain to process during that time also. It's, you know what you're looking at, but you're like, is this really what I'm looking at?
Right. So what I did see was a thing that was blinking its eyes at me. And it apparently didn't understand English, because it was just standing there staring at me. And what I felt was a rush of feelings, as though I didn't know what this thing was doing. I didn't know what I was feeling. I knew that something wasn't right, because I felt as though I was under a trance or something. And I didn't like the feeling. I didn't like the feeling of helplessness. I didn't like the feeling that this thing had over me. And I felt that it was from this thing. And this is something that I'm not used to. I've never experienced anything like this. I mean, I've seen a lot of death in a lot of different ways. I've seen some pretty bad things, in my career. But I've never seen anything like this. I mean, what the F? What's going on? Is this a joke or something? But when reality, in a moment like that, when reality smacks you like it does, when you see something like this, you find yourself scrambling in a millisecond trying to deal with what you're seeing, because your eyes tell you what you're seeing, but your mind is fighting to catch up with it. And that's the issue with seeing these things. The next thing is, I felt as though I was ready to go to sleep. I felt as though I was in mortal danger. You hear these people talking about, love, peace, where's the sunshine and stuff. I didn't feel any of that. What I felt was pure hatred. And I don't know why, because, I don't even deer hunt anymore. It's been years since I hunted an animal. But my feelings, the feelings that I felt in the presence of that beast was not what a lot of these experts say. It really isn't. In fact, it took me a year before I'd go back out there to that place again. I didn't go back for a year. I mean, it's like this. If you take a bite of a rotten sandwich, I mean a rotten shit sandwich, and excuse my language, I don't normally talk like that, but if you take a bite of a dirty, filthy sandwich with rotten meat that you know is bad, why would you take another bite of it? I don't need a second bite.
And you're probably not going to want another sandwich for a while either. So
I took a bite of that apple once, that metaphor apple once. I don't need a second bite to know what it is. What I seen, what I know, it's a very real, live, living, breathing creature. And that's my story. That's how I come to it.
Now, as far as the research program that you're with, or organization, tell everybody a little bit about what you guys do with that and how you actually got involved with your group and everything.
Dave, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. I was on the fence person. I'd never had experienced anything like that in my life before. And it led me to report it to a place called the Michigan Sasquatch Project, and that would be Mark Hearn and Bob Daigle. Bob Daigle being the same guy that had the sighting with Val. And then I get hooked up with Val, and I had gotten hooked up with others in the area. We're called the Lost Cryptid Conservatory in Michigan. And we have a Facebook page, we have a YouTube channel, but we're a bunch of interdisciplinary people that go out and basically do hardcore Sasquatch hunting in Michigan, including the Upper Peninsula, Lower Peninsula, just basically anywhere we get leads. To that end, there goes Val. And to that end, we go out and do the research. We have a large enough group that we can have a few different groups out at a few different places throughout the state at any time, which is a huge advantage for us. We broadcast our stuff live. But for me, it's about retrieving forensic scientific evidence for the existence of Bigfoot, being either plastic casts, hairs, DNA, anything of that nature is what we're looking for to put in the hands of someone of the caliber of Dr. Jeff Meldrum, or I had worked some cases previously with Michigan State University Department of Forensic Anthropology, and to get the evidence into the hands of someone of that caliber that can verify a new species in North America. And I believe that Bigfoot does exist, that it's real. I believe that it is an expert woodsman that's going to know that you're a mile away from it even before you know it's there. It knows you're there. and that ultimately they decide, not you, for the most part, they decide if you're going to have an encounter with them, not you. And you can be out there and look for them and look for them and look for them. Again, they're expert woodsmen, and we're most people cannot see them or come upon them because they're just that good. As far as cloaking, portals, all of the paranormal aspect of Bigfoot, I'm not on board with all of that. I think it's a living, breathing creature.
Well, Dave, that's my aspects of it, and while I've got you on here, you were talking about the forensics aspect of collecting forensic data. Could you explain to our viewers what is the proper way of going about collecting this data where there's no cross contamination?
Well, sure. You need to have the proper equipment when you go out. We use like sterilized paper bags. We use tweezers that have been sterilized with flame, usually rubber gloves, cotton swabs for like blood and whatnot. Basically, a lot of the same things that apply to collecting evidence in law enforcement also apply to collecting evidence when it comes to Bigfoot. Such as you don't want to put DNA into plastic bags. You want to put it into a paper bag, or anything that could have DNA or any kind of body fluids or anything like that on it. Plaster cast we carry with us in our packs. I do anyway. Some plaster of Paris, at least a liter of water, and a large freezer bag that you can mix the compound in, get to the proper consistency. And the trick is getting it to the proper consistency that you can pick up the fine detail in the print. I did teach plaster casting in college to criminal investigation students as well. And there's a fine art to having the right consistency of plaster. As far as collecting blood, as far as collecting other evidence like that, we had a case where someone had a window punched out of their shed, and the roof of the shed actually lifted up as well, and they suspected it to be Bigfoot. We couldn't get out to the scene. We got pictures of it. We got as much data as we could from it, but ultimately, I wanted to get out to the scene in a meaningful period of time and retrieve some DNA evidence. And again, that's the trick of it, being able to get out there in a reasonable amount of time and respond so that the evidence is not decayed.
Okay, how long from the time this evidence is laid by the Sasquatch or whatever, what's the time frame as far as being able to actually collect the evidence without cross-contamination?
Ultimately, I would want to be out there in hours, depending on if we get a call tonight. We would be out there tonight or in the morning. Again, I belong to the Lost Cryptids Conservatory, and we have a lot of different people of different disciplines. We've got marketing vice president. We've got a detective sergeant, which is Val. We've got guys that were prior military. We have a nurse. We've got all of that, and we would basically get a group and roll out just as soon as we could. In order to get the evidence, I would say that you need to get it within hours, if not a few days, or the evidence is going to start to degrade depending on the weather. Definitely, you see that with tracks and knuckle prints. Probably first, and then DNA out in nature is going to degrade. I wouldn't be looking for it to be reliable, much past a week or two.
Right. All right, now I've got another question right quick for you, Dave. And this is something that we've discussed quite often on this show as far as the decaying process of a Sasquatch. Would you consider that the decaying process would be that the same rate of a human, or would you consider this being a quicker process or a slower process for these type of animals?
Well, you would have to consider if it's a real animal out in the woods, that it would have a similar decaying process to that of, say, a deer, bear, something of comparable size, even humans. And the thing is, how intelligent are Sasquatch, and do they bury their dead? Do they go and take their dead to a place where they are buried and not found?
What would be your favorite piece of evidence that you have collected?
Well, we've collected, as a group, we've collected knuckle. Yeah, we've connected knuckle prints. We've collected footprints. We have an individual in the group, Ernie, who is probably has one of the largest collection of Sasquatch prints, be it secondary cast or original cast, outside the scientific community. It's really a great collection that he has in terms of other evidence: hair, blood, and then video evidence. We try always to get video evidence. We wear GoPros when we're out in the field, and we have. I have infrared. I have a parabolic mic. I have a digital recorder. We've got access in our group to FLIR as well, and I try to go for the video evidence, and then the forensic evidence is what I am. We've had instances where we've collected hair samples, and things of that nature. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Now, far as any DNA evidence, far as results, can you share any of the results that you guys have actually gotten, or? No,
we have submitted evidence. However, I think the results have been inconclusive, and the problem is contamination, or whether it's contamination or whether, at least in part, Sasquatch DNA has some commonalities with human DNA.
Well, it actually does. We interviewed a gentleman a couple weeks ago that is probably the most knowledgeable. I'd say one of the most knowledgeable in the subject that's still living. And they have actually, he's gotten multiple samples of pretty much what they have come to conclude is that the mother side is human, or very close to human DNA, and whoever or whatever the male side, the father side, is the undiscovered DNA. We don't know what it is.
Absolutely. I've heard that as well, that the mitochondrial DNA does come back to something that is close to human.
Yeah.
Right, and that's what presents a problem for us. In our group, we're actually a strictly no-kill group. I don't believe in going out and killing one of these magnificent creatures just to produce a body. In my opinion, if one is actually found dead, hit by a car or whatever, then fine, let science do their thing. But as far as us just going out and killing one, I'm totally against that. What are your feelings on that?
We're a no-kill group, and if we come across a Sasquatch, we want to come across one that died of old age. But we are no kill, and we're a conservatory, and we look towards having more interaction with them. We're trying to have interaction with them by either gifting, by hiking, and being close to them, and letting them get closer to us.
Now,
so we are very much in favor of getting.
How has gifting actually worked out for you guys? How has gifting actually worked out for you guys?
A lot of it has been negative, because if you perpetuate the gifting, then of course they expect it to be there and can get angry if the gift is not there, if they're expecting it. And on the other hand, we have one researcher, Chad, who goes out and habituates these creatures. And I've been to a spot with him, and it is a very interesting spot. It's very viable in terms of the resources that are there. And we do gift in that spot, but he had developed a relationship over the course of years of being in the spot and gifting, and they know who he is, and they know when he's there. So I think that you have the entire range of behaviors for Sasquatch that you do for humans. You have some that can be pretty laid back, pretty cool, pretty nice, and then you have some that can be very aggressive, can be very angry, and you see that entire range of personalities as well. And I think they're a lot closer to being human than not.
Yep. I agree 100%. You got any questions, Ricky?
Okay, as far as these creatures are concerned, do you feel that these creatures are actually, I've had people on here that say they're mundane teddy bears, that that you could approach them in the woods, whatever. That's not been my experience. What's your feelings on that, Dave?
Again, you have the entire range of behaviors represented within them. However, I think in general that a lot more people, and Val can tell you when he gets back on here, in terms of his research and what he's gotten out of his database, is that a lot of more people have had negative experiences than not.
I think a lot of times when people have negative experiences, it has a lot to do with the situation. I think a lot of times they may be a juvenile around. You may not even see the juvenile, but just like every other species, when they're young around, or if you put them in a situation where they feel threatened, even though the situation may not be threatening to you, but how they perceive the situation, they may feel threatened. And what is humans? I mean, every animal, just about it, or every creature, every living species, is defend or to protect their young. I mean, I think we don't know the aggressive encounters. I don't think we know their side of the encounter. Does that make sense? I guess best way to say it.
Yeah, it does. It does. I was hiking in northern Michigan. I think it was 2016 or 2017, in Forest State Park, which is just this huge expanse of wilderness area. It's on about a 10 or 12 mile hike. I was alone and came across a baby bear, a cub, and I got between the cub and its mother. And the mother tore down about half a tree and was very angry. And I basically ready the weapon, and I backed out of there as calmly as what I could, because I know that I had gotten between the mother bear and the cub, and the mother bear was going to protect the cub. So I got to a ridge. I got low. I listened, see if they were circling around on me or paralleling me on the ridge, and the mother was only interested, it seems, is in protecting its cub.
Yep.
So
and
I do agree with that.
Yep. You know, and I think it's one of those circumstances where, you know, we just don't. When you have and you can't speak for every aggressive encounter or negative encounter, but just like you said, you may walk up on these creatures and never even realize they're young around, but that mother or father doesn't realize that you don't, you know, they're just instinct is to protect.
Yeah,
or to get you out of there. I mean, because, you know, we can say they're aggressive, but if they were super aggressive creatures, I mean, I know there are people that come up missing. I know they're, you know, you've got the missing 411 and everything. I mean, you know,
right.
You know, I do think that they have been people killed by Bigfoot, but if they were that aggressive, I think we would have a lot more people actually attacked. Like, you know, there are people that consider themselves attacked, but if this creature really wanted to get a hold of you and do some damage, it can get a hold of you and do some damage.
And the research has shown, you know, just how fast they are. And I think without a doubt that they're faster than a human running, and that they be able to get hold of you. And there are reports, many reports of people who have been chased off by Bigfoot just to get them out of the territory, to get them away from whatever, get them away from their clan, their family unit.
Their whole goal of that isn't to instill fear. I don't think they're actually trying to hurt you. I think it's more of an intimidation factor where they know that, hey, if I do this, they're not going to mess with me. They're around here. They're gone.
Right. No, I don't disagree with that at all.
Guys, we have a question here. What do you look for in a location to give you the best chance at an encounter? Dave, you want to answer that?
Well, we look for, this is the Lost Cryptids Conservatory again, and this is an entire group of researchers that we go out. We look for different things. Each person looks for different subtleties. We might have a person that looks for and searches for sounds more so than tracks. We have people that look for like game trails and pay close attention to that. We have people that go out and look for, you know, the forensic evidence, as I do. You know, in terms of what we actually look for, you go out and there's structures out there. The structures may or may not be made by Sasquatch. They could be due to bushcraft, of course. But you end up with such intricately woven stick formations that it really makes you wonder who or what could do this. And I've seen stick formations, and quite frankly, there's people out there who look at stick formations and said, well, you know, that X or whatever has to be Bigfoot related. And they have to also realize, and it could be nature's hole in one, you know, that you end up with a tree that falls between or directly in two other limbs.
Now, we've encountered a lot of different. You're fine. We've encountered a lot of different structures and stuff. We were just talking about the trees, like, you know, a tree falling and landing in between a tree or whatnot. Probably one of the craziest things I've personally seen is probably a tree upside down.
Yeah.
We encountered it back in, I think it was March or April, down at one of our hot spots. Actually, where I had my sighting of a family back in 2011. we come across a tree that was actually completely upside down.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
That is pretty compelling.
I mean, it roots up in the sky. Yeah, there's no human turning this tree upside down. And this was a good 40, 50-foot tree. I mean, there's no possible way a human could have done this. I mean, and where we were at, you know,
that's very compelling evidence. And
I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
We have a little bit of a delay.
I'm sorry, bud. You broke up.
What I was saying is that that does seem like it's very compelling evidence, and that it is very compelling evidence. And also, when we go out into areas, we'll go out into an area several times, and what we look for is the changes in the area. Was this tree broken? Was that branch broken? Are there any new structures? Is there anything new out here? Are there new game trails, prints, anything of that nature?
Well, I've actually, Blake, talked about finding the tree there on our spot at Bartow County that we do investigations. I also found one on up on Rich Mountain over at LJ, which is I think like southwest of the Blue Ridge area where we hunt, and I actually found a cedar tree up there that was probably 10 inches, 12 inches in diameter, and this thing was probably 20 foot tall, but it was actually looked like it had been pulled up by the roots and stuck right straight down in the ground with the root ball extended into the air. And this is something that I find amazing, if these creatures could actually do something like that.
One or more. I think they have incredible strength, without a doubt.
Right, very, very much so.
Yeah, I just heard from Val here, and he keeps getting booted off, and he's going to keep trying to get on and get back with us, but it might take him a little bit of time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he'd sent me a text message just a minute ago, stating he was having some problems.
Now, in terms of being your topic for your show here, getting back to that, living creature or biggest hoax ever, I think there's an abundance of evidence and information that would suggest that it's a living creature, including evidence that would be suppressed by the government, because I believe that the government does not want to acknowledge they exist, because it would impact, well, first of all, it would scare the heck out of the American public.
You have the same views as us on that. That's, I hate to interrupt you there, but I preach that so much because, I mean, it would change outdoor activities, because in most people's minds, it's a monster. You tell people that a monster lives in the woods, that something exists, just like UFOs and other things, not to get into it, but if you tell other people things exist that are so close-minded that their brains can't accept something that we're taught that doesn't exist, and all of a sudden it does exist, it completely changes everything for most people's lives.
Yes, indeed. And it would have like huge implications as far as protected wildlife areas and logging, the logging industry, and it would amount to billions of dollars a year.
It would basically shut it down. It sure would. It'd be like the spotted owl in Oregon, California, and all where they had such an uproar, over the spotted owl with the logging industry. It basically killed the logging industry for years in those areas because of the one bird species. And my belief is, take the Appalachian Trail, for instance. It runs from over here at Springer Mountain at LJ, 2,000-something miles to Bridgeport, Maine. There's over 200,000 hikers walk that thing every year. If you told if you were a government official and came out and admitted that these creatures do exist, you know, how many people and how many tax dollars is going to go down the drain as far as this is concerned? If you told that many people that this creature is actually out there in the woods, do you think there's going to be 200,000 people or plus walk that trail this year? I mean, and that's just one instance.
I firmly believe that they have ways of dealing with Sasquatch that get out of control or are overly aggressive, and to the point of killing them and taking them out and removing them from the area.
They have been some stories. What was that one you were telling me about, Ricky?
Oh yeah, a guy out of Cage Cove, Tennessee. He's actually got some film. I got some documentary tapes on YouTube, and it's dealing with his family back in the 1930s to 1940s when they actually made the Smoky Mountains a national park. He said that he actually had family members that told him that they were sent out, paid for by the government, and was sent out to exterminate these creatures from those mountains. And you know, he's on YouTube. I can't think of the guy's name. I'll actually hunt the guy's name up if you want me to, Dave, and send it to you, and you can watch these videos.
Sure, I'd love that.
I believe this stuff does happen, and I believe it's going to continue to happen.
And in terms of it being a hoax, it would have to be quite a hoax that's been perpetuated over hundreds of years, because you would have to have an organization almost to perpetuate the same hoax. Say, for instance, and I don't think they have anything to do with anything, but the Odd Fellows, if they had a history of doing Sasquatch hoaxes. The problem with that is, how long has the organization been around? The organization would have had to last for 500 years because we have reports going back that long. And what about the reports from the Native Americans even before the European settlers came? It just, you cannot, within the period of time that you're looking at this, and the fact that these people don't have any interaction with each other to make the same reports, the fact that they do come up with the same reports is really lending to it being an actual creature.
Yeah, well, it's just something we like to ask to get, different people's opinion on, because me and Ricky, we both have visual encounters. So, you have people that, we do this for I don't even say ourselves. We do it because it's consumed our life over the years. It's not to prove it to anybody. We know. Far as the research we do and everything, I don't want to say it's not to prove it, but that's not our end goal. We do it because we enjoy to do it.
Well, my ordeal on this one is that I do this more to get the knowledge out there that these creatures do exist, number one, and to make people that are actually in higher authority than we are to realize that these creatures do exist, and that every day in this country we are destroying more land. I don't know how it is in your state, but here in Georgia we've had farm after farm that's been taken over, mountain land that's been developed, areas that these creatures actually use to thrive and survive in, that's been taken over for buildings, for high rises, for apartment buildings, cabins, whatever.
Right.
And,
right.
We're actually destroying their habitat.
Look at the lake, Ricky.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't cleared any of that land out where we've had our activity, but it's starting to get close. Eventually, after the next 20, 30 years, where, they'll have to, they've got to move. Or, find another place, or, especially down in the area we're talking about, there are a lot of land down there, but, eventually, the land's going to run out.
we've even had encounters reported and have had sightings in our borderline urban areas, like in the suburbs and stuff like that. And definitely, we're encroaching on their territory, encroaching on their land and their environment. And ultimately, our hunters compete with them for deer as a food source. And we're definitely encroaching on their environment. So, why shouldn't they be angry?
And I do believe with that, you may start to see more and more aggressive encounters.
Well, I do too. I mean, we're taking their homes.
Yes.
We're taking food out of their mouths. I mean, it's just like us. If somebody comes into our home and steals what we got, we get PO'd, and we're going to do something about it. And that's the same way they are. When we leave our home and go into the wilderness, we're in their environment then. We're totally at their mercy. And who's to say, like Blake says, as that wilderness shrinks and the game abundancy, the wild berries, the things that they live off of, they thrive off of, as that shrinks, then what's to say that they're not going to fight back?
Well, and I hate to say it, but it gives bad impressions of us to them, I'm sure. We come in, take their land. What do they think about that? What's their thought process? I mean,
take their land, take their food.
So,
are you there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Val is not able to get his computer up and going again, so he's not going to be back on with us. But we can carry on. Val, in his data mining that he does, he's compiled thousands of reports basically into his 4 data banks, and he comes up with the 6 most important data points that have to do in regard to Bigfoot sightings and their probabilities. And the first one is camping, and the next one is farming, and these are what he finds for Michigan. Third is hiking, 4th is hunting, 5th is motorists, people in cars having encounters, and 6 is residential encounters. We're just talking about residential, basically us encroaching on their land and everything, and the fact that they are entering more into the residential areas. He has taken many reports of Bigfoots that have been window peeping, and we just took a report out west, western Michigan, of the same, and we've been out to investigate that property as well, and that area as well. And it's very, very feasible area to have a population of Bigfoots in them. And I think according to Val's data that it also suggests migration, that they do migrate for mating. They're well aware of hunting season, but they do migrate towards northern Michigan at certain points of the year. Have you guys?
I've always said that in our area, through our research, we found that they are very migratory as far as food source is concerned. If a food source starts depleting in one area, they're kind of like we are with our supermarkets that we shop at. If we've got a favorite supermarket where we shop and it suddenly closes down, then we're going to go somewhere else to shop.
Well, I think a lot of times they do end up in the back to the same areas, though. For example, I know I keep bringing up the place, but Alatoona Lake, where we're talking about earlier, it's been 11 years since I've had my sighting down there, and we've had all that activity where it started. And you can still go down there, and stuff still happens. is it the same family? Is it, I don't know if it's the exact same ones that were down there when we first started having encounters in this area, but 11 years later, they're either the same family, another family, for whatever reason, they're there.
Right. Well, I consider that, as far as I consider that down there as being that clan's home area. But as I said, I think these things migrate with the seasons. As far as migrating, we're right at the foot of the Appalachian mountain chain here, and I think that these things actually migrate. Excuse me, migrate from lowland to the mountains with the change of seasons, and then back from the mountains to the lowlands, with change of seasons.
Well, and one reason they may actually stay in the area down there if they don't migrate is their situation. It's a WMA, so it's a wildlife management area. It's right on a lake, abundance of deer, abundance of wildlife, and it's only, you're only able to hunt at certain times of the year, so many weeks out of the year. Everything they need's in that one area. So, if they're put in a situation like that, I mean, do they migrate or do they not?
That's a good question. Very good question.
They're protected there. They don't really have to worry about people out there, out in the woods hunting very much and everything. So, I don't know.
There's no competition for food. There's no competition for food and people hunting, to be honest with you. Another thing, one of Val's data points suggests that they go underground is in being where you're at and Appalachian Trail and all of that. There's extensive cave systems in Michigan, as well as Kentucky, as well as Tennessee, as well as throughout the Appalachians. What is your feeling about Bigfoot and Sasquatches being an underground species that lives primarily underground and travels between place to place using caves?
Okay,
I'm a firm believer that they use caves. I mean, we have abundance of cave systems here. And what better way to either travel or stay undetected or have a place to live than a cave system?
Right.
Why wouldn't they use them?
That's
the better question. Why would
exactly?
We live 30 miles from one of the largest cave systems in the United States, over in Lafayette, Georgia. I've lost train of thought here. I can't think of the name of the Pettyjohn Cave. Pettyjohn Cave is probably one of the largest systems. I think it's like over 40 miles of cave system under that mountain over there. And I've explored that cave quite often. I've never found any structures. I have found look like bedding areas where tree limbs and stuff was back 10 miles back in the caves. So how do you explain that unless it was a Sasquatch that done it? I'm not talking little squirrel beds. I'm talking beds that are 8-10 foot in diameter, some 12-14 foot in diameter, with fresh tree limbs stacked up for these things, and you could actually tell where something had been bedding in these areas. So, I'm with Blake on that. I do believe these creatures do use cave systems.
I mean, I don't see why they wouldn't. I mean, that's harder for my brain to process than why if they do. I mean, it makes 100% sense.
Absolutely.
You're
Sorry about that, guys.
Popular tonight, aren't you, Ricky?
Yeah, I reckon. Everybody knows that I do podcasts on Wednesday nights, and for some odd reason, I can go 3 days without getting a call, and then all of them on Wednesday nights.
They still call. That's awesome. In terms of what you guys see down there in Georgia, what types of physical characteristics do you think that are different than neighboring Florida, and could be different than us up here in Michigan?
Okay,
Well-
now I know some investigators from Florida, and according to what they tell me, and I've never hunted Sasquatch in Florida. I've never had any investigations down there myself, but from what I've been told, as far as the Florida skunk ape is concerned, that it's a much smaller creature than what we have actually here in North Georgia. I know my first sighting, the one I saw was a juvenile, probably 5.5, 6 foot tall. But I know people, Blake, for instance, the family of 3 that he saw, they were much larger than the one that I saw.
As far as what I saw, dark brown creature. Male was about 7.5, 7 foot tall. Not super huge, but a big creature. Female was probably about 6, 6.5, and the juvenile was about 4 foot tall. Conish kind of shaped head to a certain extent. My sighting was about 100, 150 yard sighting, so I was fairly close to the creatures. But not close enough to where I could see any facial features or anything like that. Real like shaggy-ish, mattish hair. It wasn't super long, maybe about like that, maybe about 5, 6 inches. But they weren't, other than the cone-ish shaped head, that was what stood out to me most from what I could see from the creatures.
Sure. I think there are a lot of similarities between what we're talking about. Is no matter whether you see it in Florida, Tennessee, Georgia, Michigan, California, Washington, that there are a lot, but I wouldn't expect them all to be the same. I think that you have family trees the same as humans, and humans come in all shapes and sizes. And
I'm sure
look differently.
I'm sure you do have some interbreeding that happens with Sasquatch also. I think that has a lot to do with genetics, and maybe why in certain areas you have ones that look a certain way, then 100 miles away you may have within a 100-mile radius of ones that kind of look a certain different way to a certain extent. We've talked to some people that's actually had some really close encounters as far as like facial features goes. I hear a lot of, facial features that look a lot like human facial features once you actually can see their face.
I would tend to agree with that, that they do seem more human than not human, and more intelligent than not intelligent.
A lot of people, that we've talked to are so surprised when they, how much they actually resemble a human in the face. That, that was one of their main things that stood out to them, being able to see the face.
Absolutely. And it was pretty darn dark. I could not see facial features in my particular encounter, but the rest of it pretty much gels with what people report all over the nation. And let's face it, people are reporting the very same thing. They don't know one another. Even before the internet, even before popular media, even before TV or newspapers would report the very same thing. How can they be hoaxes? How can they be hoaxes if that's the case?
Right, that goes back to, we're talking about the Native Americans. My grandfather was full-blooded Cherokee, and my grandfather was actually born in 1880. And I can remember as a young boy sitting around the fire at night and listening to him talk about the old stories from up in the Carolinas where he lived at back as a young man, and him actually telling of encounters that they had with these creatures up there back at that time. And this was from a man that I never knowed the man to lie. I never knowed the man to state a mystery in his life. In what time I knew him till I was 14 years old when Grandpa passed away. Man was a hard-working man, but a very truthful man, and he's actually told me of several encounters that had taken place with these things that he had had over the years, and you know, I guess that piqued my interest back then, and then after my sighting in '81, you know, that just really confirmed to me what he had told me as a young child, and I guess that's what's led me to this point in my life as far as uh, being such an avid researcher into this creature.
If you would have asked me when I was 15, 16 years old, if I would have ever thought I would have actually had an encounter, was I a believer? Sure. You know, I've always been into that type of things. Like, you know, I've always been into it, but never thought that I would actually ever had a visual or any type of encounter. I mean, you can ask Risky. The first time I actually ever heard one howl, because that was one of the first things we ever actually had happen to us down at this cemetery, was a howl. I didn't know what was going on. My mind was absolute. I was ready to go. Didn't want no part of it. Didn't care. Just get me out of there.
Absolutely, and a lot of people have that same feeling, and you know, a feeling that they've been zapped somehow, and we think that it has to do with something electromagnetic.
Something telepathically, or kind of what they call it. Well, I wouldn't call it mind speak, but
very low frequency, kind of like what tigers do, and other animals do.
Below 20 hertz.
Certainly, that's what I felt, and certainly Val had felt something as well as many other people. But we also think that there's a link to like EMF and power lines. We have a lot of sightings in and around power lines as well, and we think that they use power lines as a route of travel. That they use rivers and streams as a route of travel.
A lot of your power line areas are cleared out too, so they can almost use it as a highway almost.
And train tracks, along train tracks and railways,
Right,
as well.
Yep.
Love that song.
well, I'm trying to put this out here for right now.
Now, what's your opinion on samurai chatter?
I just don't know. You know, in terms of what I've experienced, I can't say that I totally discount it, but I would have to experience it myself.
Yeah.
How about you?
We've actually we've experienced what I guess they would consider samurai chatter. I don't call it that, but I mean, we have heard what sounds like talking, but actually no audible words that we can understand.
Kind of like Sierra Sounds is what you're talking about.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We had an encounter down at the lake, and also over at Blue Ridge, where we heard these things that you could actually tell that it was some type of communication between these animals, but you couldn't make out what the actual pronunciation of the words are. You couldn't make out what the actual vocal was. But
it sounds like talking, but non-distinguishable words. I mean, that's the only way I can describe it.
Right, the night that happened to us at the lake down there,
Right.
man, you know, the first time that blew me away, because it wasn't just one of these creatures. It was actually, it sounded like maybe 3 or 4 of them in separate directions, like they were talking to one another, but it sounded like it was coming from the treetops itself instead of from down ground level. And this really blew my mind for me. You know, it was something that I had never heard until that moment. And then the same way over at Blue Ridge, and also Blake and I over there at Blue Ridge, we had something happen here a few months ago that really caught my attention. We were over there. This was, God, what, Blake, back in...
It was March.
March of this past year, and we went over and set up to do an investigation, and just right at dark, we heard one cut loose with a howl, and then a few minutes later, it sounded like these owls started calling to one another, but it was. Dude, I'm telling you, it was the biggest owl
It was
I have
really,
ever heard.
really weird. Like I mean, it was probably just an owl, but he
Hey,
just telling what
if it was
happened,
an
and I
owl,
don't know
this
what.
sucker
I
had to
mean,
weigh
it was
400
weird.
pounds and had a 100-pound lung capacity, because I've never heard an owl with that type of hoot before in my life.
That's interesting you say that, because we've been out just even this year, just in the past few months, and we've run into things that sounded like owls, things that sounded like coyotes, things that sounded like wolves, but you don't think that they are. In our opinion, that Squatch sits out in the woods, and they have a lot of time that they can mimic these animals, and they become very good at it. And I think that's part of the signaling between them.
It's funny.
One of the weirdest things, talking about, you know, mimicking and resembling sounds. I don't even know. Like, it was the craziest thing I've ever heard. We were down at the lake, and we'd walked back in the cove. The lake was down. It was winter time, and we had my dad with me. And we'd been telling my dad about these howls. And my dad, you know, is kind of like me, how I was before I actually had my encounter. Yeah, he believes, but, you know, would ever think that, you know, anything, he would actually ever hear anything or see anything. So we'd walk back in this cove, and we'd done Ricky had done some howls on the way back there. It was super quiet, super cold. I mean, no crickets, no nothing, just dead quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were getting ready to leave. We were getting ready to start walking back to the truck, and we were about a mile and a half away from the truck at this point. And Ricky does a howl, and
Blake told me to go ahead, Rick, do one more howl.
They are maybe about 20 foot of water in between us and the other side of the lake. And Ricky does a howl, and just on the tree line, within probably 60, 70 yards from us, we get a response, and it sounded like somebody took a recorder and recorded Ricky and replayed his howl back. It could have not been any more the exact same howl that Ricky gave. It was absolutely crazy.
No echo. It was not an echo. You know, I'll sign any affidavit there is on that one. It was not an echo. This thing, it was an honest to God mimic. It sounded identical to the howl that I had just gave. I mean, identical to it.
Okay, it gives me cold chills right now thinking about it.
In our experience, they do have that capacity to mimic animals.
But this is something.
Still there?
This is something that happened. That I'm like Blake. You know, I'll never forget that. There was one other instance. We were down there. We were down there a couple of weeks later. We were actually in his dad's boat. We went around in the same cove, sitting about maybe 20 feet off the bank. I told Blake to give a howl. Blake howled, and within a split second of Blake's howl, this thing was just right on top of the bank, right in the edge of the wood line from us. I mean, this thing bellowed out, and you could actually feel the pressure in your chest. And it scared me so bad that my total response was to Blake and his dad would get us the hell out of here. It was right there on top of us, man. It was awesome, and yet
I turn around and Ricky's headed towards the water. I'm like, where are you going?
Very cool encounter, anyway. Do we have any questions from any of the viewers that are out there?
Got one one, he wants to know what was the, well, I think you've already answered this, and what was your first encounter? And then another one wants to know what type of bait do y'all use when doing gifting areas?
What type of what we use in gifting areas?
What type of bait do y'all use when doing
Oh,
gifting
bait.
areas?
Yeah, apples. Apples, and then I've tried and had a little bit of success with gummy bears, believe it or not.
Huh.
But we put the apples up, and Chad, one of our researchers, stands 6'8", and he can bring the branches down to us. But we get the apples up high enough that no other animals can really get to them, and we'll set some up, and then we'll go back out to the same area the next day or 2 days later, and the apples are gone and the branches are broken, kind of like they were ripped down. But in the case, go ahead.
Have you ever tried putting sand up on your gifting area to see if you can get any type of prints?
We have used rakes before to rake the areas, and we have a base layer of sand in the soil in Michigan anyway. So there's a lot of sand nearby and sandier areas that we are able to see prints in should they present themselves. But in terms of getting prints directly from the trees, I wish we can say that, or I wish I could say anyway that I have, but I have not yet. So that's one of the things. How can they? And they seem to sometimes disappear. They seem to, and are they experts at camouflage? Sure. But there's reports of these things, walking along in the snow and leaving tracks, and then all of a sudden the tracks stop. How do we explain these things? So, do you explain it and just say it's a hoax? I'm not so sure. I think that science has a lot yet to explain about the world. We've only been aware of our surroundings scientifically for a few hundred years, and I think there's plenty more for us to discover.
Yep, we know about this much.
That's true. That's true. And especially when it comes to Sasquatch, we know very little. We spend our time in the field chasing this creature, trying to learn all we can about it. But there's times that I feel that we're spinning our wheels.
Look at space space exploring. We've worked so hard to explore space, but we really can't because we don't have the technology to really get beyond our galaxy in a reasonable amount of time. But yet we don't even know anything about our oceans hardly.
Exactly, and until a few years ago, they thought the giant squid was just a myth. Just like Sasquatch, is a known myth from the Native Americans, from early America, from the early settlers, and there's always some truth behind the myth, I think, and we need to start looking at that. I think the problem is that there our current science, meaning physical science, biology, chemistry, the way that they examine and they use, for instance, a scientific method, which means that you can do an experiment and replicate the experiment and get the same result each time. Well, Bigfoot reports and Bigfoot sightings are not like that. Each one is different and unique.
You might have similarities to a certain extent, but everyone's different.
They're different, and I really don't think that our modern science yet has a way of yet describing this phenomena and describing what it is, much less answering the big questions that we seek answers to. I don't think our science can ask the right questions yet. We need a new way of understanding. We need a new paradigm in order to understand these things. Does that make sense?
It does. It does 100%.
Very much so. Guys,
Well, I mean, the thing with science, though, it's you got to have scientific proof to prove something. Well, in a circumstance like Sasquatch, it's not always 100% scientific. Like far as DNA proof and far as even video proof and stuff like that. It's you take personal encounters and you can learn a lot about their behaviors just by personal encounters.
Right. And that's what Val tries to do with his database. He tries to find these commonalities that can be lending towards, as much of a scientific explanation as what we can come up with for them. But at the end of the day, I think we need to have a new understanding totally of the world around us.
A lot of it you can't explain. That's the thing about you can't. Yes, we need scientific evidence, but just like you were talking about the footprints and stuff like that, there are things about this creature that almost seem otherworldly, or
totally. You end up with cases such as the Missouri Monster, where they had a string of sightings and orbs with the sighting, where they had seen orbs with it, and to the point that one of the researchers, one of the guys, had found the lair of the Sasquatch, or reported Sasquatch, and had it come back into the lair and saw it and shot it, and it turned into an orb.
Well, it's funny about orbs. Down at the location where I actually had my sighting, me and Ricky's actually encountered a good sized orb down there. But we were both able to see it.
Yeah, this thing was a massive orb, about 6-8 foot off the ground, and it was
4 or 5 foot in diameter. It was big enough. We were sitting probably 200 feet from it, and we were able to see this thing very clearly. And it's right in front of the tree line. It goes to the right, and all of a sudden it kind of just does a weird motion and just kind of goes back the other way and disappears.
But what part do you think orbs would play with Bigfoot or Sasquatch, though? And what's its role?
I mean, it's almost like it's paranormal to a certain extent.
Paranormal because we just don't understand it yet, or paranormal because it's magic. Because if you
could be a little of both.
If you told people back in the 1500s that there are such things as bacteria and germs, and they're too small for us to see, it would seem very magical, and people would scoff at it and say they didn't exist. Or even atoms, that the very minuscule world of the atom, that we can see atoms now and that we can record them and we can actually predict them, would have been magic. Our technology certainly would have been magic to people 500 years ago. So I guess what I'm saying by this is, what in the future is our science going to be able to explain that looks like it's magic to us now?
Yep. You said it the best way it could be said.
Dave, I've got another question here. Guy wants to know what your feelings is on using trail cams in your research areas.
That's a great question, and in our experience in using, we have had researchers use them in the past with no luck, but it's our feeling and our experience that they emit a frequency that the animals, particularly Sasquatch, can hear. So basically, it would be a beacon out in the woods that would be like a low humming noise that they could hear, and direct them directly to it and say, okay, hey, this is a trail cam. I'm going to avoid this area. And I really feel that that's probably why trail cams have not been used really effectively in the hunt for Bigfoot.
I believe they can see the infrared. So, I mean, you know, they know they're there.
That's what I've had most of the guys and the people that I've interviewed over the years tell me that they think it's the infrared light that they emit. But yeah, most definitely frequency would be another thing that would be it would be kind of like a dog. Their hearing is much more sensitive than what ours is, and
absolutely.
These things can hear things that for miles away that we can't hear. And I'd say that
they know where. How do you think they know somebody's in the area before we would ever know they're in an area? They may be a ways away.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
hearing sight and sound that is superior to ours, very superior to ours.
That's just like my little dog I've got here. He'll notify me before anybody turns off the highway in a vehicle down here, and I've got a long drive, and he'll notify me that there's somebody, you know, turned off whatever, that I can't even hear them myself, but when he goes to barking and raising sand, then I know somebody's outside. You know, so it's the same way. I'd say it's the same way with Sasquatch, yes.
Absolutely.
I don't trust his opinion on nothing.
You'll have to excuse me. He and my dog Dollar have got a love-hate relationship.
I love dogs, but his little Chewini, excuse my language, is a little shit.
Chewini?
That dog loves to hate Blake.
I got 3 myself.
You don't ever know what kind of mood he's going to be in. Like, it'll look like he wants loves, and you love him for a minute, and it seems like he likes it, and all of a sudden something flips in his head, and he's like, I'm going to bite you. Mid-pet. Like, it makes no sense.
Kind of like his owner, I guess.
A little bit.
All right, guys, I'm going to wrap the show up. Dave, thank you very much for coming on the show tonight.
Yep.
You've answered a lot of questions for us tonight.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Out there for the viewers to digest. Hey, man, you're welcome to come back at any time. Anytime
yeah,
you
want to. I like to get Val on here.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Val would be worth having back. And if I could just give a shout out quick, our Facebook page is the Lost Cryptids Conservatory, and we have a YouTube channel, the Lost Cryptids Conservatory, and then Val's page is Michigan Bigfoot and Reporting Center, Gumshoe Guy's Corner is what it's called, because a gumshoe is an old term for detective. I don't know if you guys know or not, but a Gumshoe Guy's Corner. And he has a lot of great information on there. He keeps it very, very fresh. I'm an administrator on it as well, and we've got just a ton of people. And it seems like half of the people on there are active on there as well. So it's a great site to go to, as well as the Lost Cryptids. We're always out in the field, and we post live feed from the field, and as well as tapes from our expedition. So I appreciate it, gentlemen. It's been a fun time.
Thank you, Dave. Everybody make sure to go show these guys some love. Subscribe to their channel.
Thank you. Hopefully we'll talk again really soon.
Whatever you guys do, go check their Facebook pages out. Subscribe to their YouTube channels. We're all about helping one another out. And I really appreciate you and Val coming on tonight, even though Val didn't get to hang out with us much. But both of you are more than welcome to come back at any time.
Thank you.
Just give us a holler, and we'll be glad to have you back on.
And you on our show as well. We love that. Because I think between Michigan and Georgia, there's a lot that we have to discuss that's in common, and a lot of the differences too. And I think it's all important.
Anything to further research.
That's it. That's the whole key to it. All right, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Dave, take care.
Yep, thank you, Dave. It was a good meeting you, brother.
You as well.
Blake, you want to close it out, bud?
All right, guys. Thank you as always. If you don't mind, show us some support. Hit the subscribe button if you're not already subscribed. Leave us a comment. Hit the bell notification. Give us a thumbs up. As well as the guys. If you don't mind, go subscribe to their channel. Show them some love. And I hope you guys have a great night. Anything you guys say, Ricky?
Now we'll close her out with that. Thank everybody. Thank Dave. Thank Val for their participation tonight. We really enjoyed having y'all guys on. And remember, hit our subscribe buttons and also subscribe to their channels, their YouTube pages. Good night, everybody. Have a safe one. And please remember, as I always say, when you're out in the forest, you're in the Sasquatch's element. So please be safe, but enjoy. Good night, everybody.
Good night, guys.